Imagine trusting your best friend so much that you let him spend time alone with your wife. You think nothing of it because, well, he's your buddy. You've worked together, laughed together, and shared countless memories. But then one day, everything changes. Your friend looks you in the eye and tells you something that will shatter your world into a million pieces. This isn't just some Hollywood gossip or a made-up story. This is the real-life tragedy of David McCallum, the beloved actor you might know from NCIS, and how his friendship with the tough guy legend Charles Bronson cost him everything he held dear. Let me take you back to a time when David McCallum was one of the most popular actors in the world. It was the 1960s, and David was starring in a show called The Man from UNCL. He wasn't just famous, he was a sensation. Young women screamed his name. His face was on magazine covers everywhere. He was living the dream that every actor hopes for. But behind all that fame and success, David had something even more precious. He had a beautiful family and a marriage that everyone in Hollywood admired. In 1957, when David was just 24 years old, he married a gorgeous young actress named Jill Ireland. She was 21, full of life, and absolutely stunning. Their wedding took place in London, England, and it was like something out of a fairy tale. Here were two young actors, both talented and beautiful, starting their life together with nothing but hope and love in their hearts. They didn't waste any time either. Their romance moved fast, and before anyone knew it, they were husband and wife. For 9 whole years, David and Jill built a life together that seemed perfect from the outside. They had 3 sons together, and they were raising a family while both pursuing their acting careers. Can you imagine how hard that must have been, being parents while also trying to make it in one of the toughest industries in the world? But they made it work. Or at least everyone thought they did. They lived quietly, avoiding the wild Hollywood party scene. When they went out, it was usually for work events or award ceremonies where David was being honored for his incredible performances. They kept to themselves, treasuring their privacy and their family time. And when they did socialize, it was usually with one particular friend, a fellow actor who they had known for years, a man who had become part of their inner circle. His name was Charles Bronson. Now, if you don't know who Charles Bronson was, let me paint you a picture. This guy was the definition of tough. He had this rugged, weathered face that looked like it had seen every hard thing life could throw at it. He played tough guys in movies, and he was convincing because, well, he kind of was a tough guy in real life too. He wasn't a pretty boy like some actors. He was rough around the edges, masculine, and had this quiet intensity that made him perfect for action roles. David and Charles had met while filming a movie called The Great Escape back in 1963. It was one of those classic war films that everyone remembers. The two actors became friends on that set, and that friendship continued long after the cameras stopped rolling. Charles became so close to the McCallum family that he would often come over for dinner. He was welcome in their home any time. David trusted him completely. When David was too tired to go out for dinner, he thought nothing of letting Jill and Charles go out together. After all, Charles was his friend. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. That's what could go wrong. Everything. You see, while David was busy working and building his career, something was happening right under his nose. Feelings were developing between his wife and his best friend. Jill and Charles were spending more and more time together, and somewhere along the way, friendship turned into something else. Something that would destroy David's world. Can you imagine the betrayal? Your wife and your friend, the two people you trust most in the world, falling for each other while you're completely unaware? The bomb finally dropped in May of 1967. That was when the whole world found out what had been going on behind closed doors. David McCallum's perfect marriage, the one that everyone admired, was over. The news spread like wildfire through Hollywood and beyond. Fans who had looked up to this couple as an example of true love were shocked. How could this happen? How could a marriage that seemed so strong just fall apart like this? But here's where the story gets even more heartbreaking. According to some accounts, Charles Bronson had actually told David years earlier, back when they first met during The Great Escape, that he was going to marry Jill. Can you believe that? Some say Charles looked at David and basically announced his intentions toward David's own wife. Now David probably thought it was just a joke at the time. Maybe they all laughed about it. But Charles wasn't joking. He was dead serious. And he was patient. He waited. He became part of their lives, earned their trust, and then when the moment was right, he made his move. David was devastated. How could he not be? Here he was, at the peak of his career, more famous than he had ever dreamed of being, and suddenly his personal life was in ruins. The woman he loved, the mother of his children, was leaving him for his friend. And it wasn't like they could keep it quiet. This was Hollywood, and David was one of the biggest stars in the world at that time. The press had a field day with it. Newspapers and magazines ran stories about the scandal. Everyone had an opinion. Some blamed Jill, some blamed Charles. Some even tried to find ways to blame David, suggesting that maybe he had been too focused on his career and had neglected his wife. But David did something that shocked everyone. Instead of getting angry, instead of seeking revenge or bad-mouthing Charles and Jill to anyone who would listen, David took the high road. He chose forgiveness. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't imagine having that kind of strength. Most people would have been furious. Most people would have ended that friendship immediately and never spoken to Charles Bronson again. But David was different. He later said that he believed negativity was unnecessary. He chose to accept what had happened and move forward with his life. Think about what that means for a second. David had to watch his wife divorce him in 1967 and then marry Charles Bronson just 1 year later in 1968. He had to see them together, living the life that was supposed to be his. Charles and Jill went on to have what looked like a wonderful marriage. They stayed together for 22 years, until Jill tragically died from breast cancer in 1990. During those years, Charles and Jill became one of Hollywood's power couples. They appeared in movies together. They raised a family together. They seemed genuinely happy. And David had to witness all of it from the sidelines. The affair and the divorce didn't just cost David his marriage, it cost him so much more than that. First, there was the emotional toll. Imagine the pain of betrayal from the two people closest to you. That kind of hurt doesn't just go away. It stays with you. It changes you. David had to deal with that pain while also trying to maintain his career and be there for his 3 sons from his marriage to Jill. He had to figure out how to co-parent with an ex-wife who was now married to his former best friend. Can you imagine how awkward and painful those interactions must have been? Then there was the public humiliation. Remember, this wasn't some private matter. David McCallum was incredibly famous at this time. Everyone knew his business. Everyone had an opinion about what happened. Fans who had loved him and Jill together now looked at him with pity. Some even lost respect for him because he didn't fight back or make a big scene. In Hollywood, where image is everything, this kind of scandal could have destroyed his career. And in many ways, it did affect him deeply. David's attitude toward the press changed completely after this incident. Before the affair became public, he had been relatively cooperative with journalists and reporters. But afterward, he became much more guarded and private. Who could blame him? The media had turned his personal tragedy into entertainment for millions of people. They had picked apart his marriage, speculated about what went wrong, and probably made him relive the pain over and over again with their constant questions and stories. So David pulled back. He became less accessible. And this happened right at the peak of his popularity, when he probably should have been out there promoting himself and his work. There's also something that doesn't get talked about enough. The affair created rumors and vicious gossip that followed David for a while. Ears. People talked. They whispered. They made assumptions about him, about Jill, and about Charles. Some of these rumors were probably true. Many were likely exaggerated or completely false. But true or not, they damaged reputations and hurt real people. David had to live with this cloud hanging over him, knowing that whenever people heard his name, they might also remember the scandal. But perhaps the biggest cost was the loss of trust. After something like this happens, how do you trust anyone again? David eventually remarried to a woman named Catherine Carpenter, and by all accounts they have had a long and happy marriage. But I have to wonder, in the back of his mind, did David ever worry? Did he ever have moments of doubt? Once you've been betrayed that deeply by people you trusted completely, it has to change how you see the world and the people in it. And what about his friendship with Charles? Some reports suggest that David and Charles eventually made peace with each other. David, being the gracious person he was, apparently let go of his anger and accepted what had happened. But could things ever really be the same? Could they ever truly be friends again after something like that? Maybe they were cordial. Maybe they could be in the same room without tension. But that deep friendship, that bond they had once shared, was gone forever. That's another thing David lost. Not just a wife, but a friend he had valued and trusted. Looking back at this story now, decades later, it's hard not to feel sympathy for everyone involved. Jill Ireland later said that her marriage to David had failed, and that she would never get over it. She admitted that you can never go back, and she seemed to carry guilt about what happened. Charles Bronson got the woman he wanted, and they had what appeared to be a genuine love story that lasted until her death. And David? David moved on with his life, found new love, and continued his acting career, eventually becoming beloved by a whole new generation of fans through his role on NCIS. But here's what we need to understand. This wasn't just some Hollywood drama or entertainment gossip. These were real people with real feelings who went through real pain. David McCallum lost his wife, his friend, his privacy, and probably a piece of his ability to trust others. That's a heavy price to pay. And while he handled it with remarkable grace and dignity, we shouldn't forget just how much this friendship cost him. The story of David McCallum and Charles Bronson reminds us that fame and success don't protect us from heartbreak. It reminds us that betrayal can come from the people we least expect. And it shows us that sometimes, even when we do everything right, life can still throw us curveballs that knock us down. But it also shows us something beautiful. It shows us that forgiveness is possible, even in the face of devastating betrayal. It shows us that we can survive the worst moments of our lives and still find happiness again. David McCallum could have let this destroy him. He could have become bitter and angry. He could have lashed out and tried to hurt the people who hurt him. But he didn't. He chose a different path. He chose to let go of the negativity and move forward. That takes incredible strength and character. It's a lesson we could all learn from. So the next time, may you see David McCallum on your television screen, whether it's in reruns of The Man from UNCL or episodes of NCIS, remember that behind that talented actor is a man who survived one of life's toughest challenges. Remember that he lost so much because he trusted the wrong people, but he didn't let that loss define him. He picked himself up, dusted himself off, and kept going. That's the real story here, not the scandal, not the betrayal, but the resilience. In the end, the friendship between David McCallum and Charles Bronson did cost David everything he had at that moment in his life. It cost him his marriage, his family life as he knew it, his trust, his privacy, and his friendship. But it didn't cost him his dignity. It didn't cost him his ability to love again. And it didn't cost him his future happiness. David McCallum is proof that even when you lose everything, you haven't lost everything. There's always a chance to rebuild, to start over, and to find joy again. If this story touched your heart or taught you something valuable about forgiveness, resilience, or the complexities of human relationships, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button below. It helps more people discover these important stories about the real lives behind the Hollywood glamour. And if you want to see more deep dives into the untold stories of classic Hollywood stars, make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share this video with someone who loves old Hollywood history or who might need to hear this message about overcoming betrayal and moving forward with grace. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.